Hello, welcome to another Universities UK webcast on innovation and growth. My name is Greg Wade from Universities UK.
And I'm Kevin Richardson from the Higher Education Funding Council for England.
This topic for this relatively short webcast is simply an update on where we are with the managing authority arrangements for the European Social Fund. And that is the big question, Kevin.
Yeah. I'll begin at the beginning, as it were. Mm-hmm. The government and the ministers have decided just before Christmas that the financial responsibility for the European Social Fund will remain with the Department of Pensions, right, rather than has been proposed previously for it to transfer to communities and local government. Mm-hmm. Some people might ask, well, what on earth is a managing authority? Well, the details of all of that are set out in the regulations. For those anoraks around us who wish to do that, that's fine, go ahead and look. But in reality, at the bottom line, what it means is they're the agency, or they're that part of government which is financially responsible for the cash. And if anything goes wrong and they're unable to reclaim that cash from the delivery organisation, mm-hmm, then they've got to find it. Yeah. And if there's any fines to be paid for non-performance or irregularities, then that department is accountable for it. Mm-hmm. So the buck stops with them, as it were. Yeah. It's of interest, I think, for universities because, of course, the expectation that an element of the European Social Fund will be made available to support high-level skills. Yeah. And I think whilst there's a general acceptance across the sector that the majority of the European Social Fund will quite rightly be headed towards the support for people who are unemployed or mm-hmm, perhaps who need more basic skills development, but at least some, especially where it fits with the growth priorities of each of the local enterprise partnerships and the strategic economic plans, then an element of the European Social Fund should be made available for that. So what does this decision mean for us as a sector at the moment? Well, I think first of all, of course, in the design of this, I think there was a real desire where it was possible to align business support activities and knowledge exchange in our language, which would be supported with the European Development Fund, to align that as best as possible with skills activity support for the European Social Fund. So how can we ensure that alignment can still be achieved if responsibility for the two different types of funding is in two different places? And I think the next area where I think the sector needs to work with the Department of Work and Pensions, as opposed to the communities and local government now, is for that part of the social fund which will not go through what is called the opt-in process, so the remaining European Social Fund, how can universities in their local partnerships work with the Department of Work and Pensions to design the calls process which is about to happen in the next few weeks and months? The issue is, of course, the Department of Work and Pensions, because hitherto most of its managing authority responsibilities have been undertaken on its behalf by organisations like the Skills Funding Agency, at the moment doesn't necessarily have sufficient staff at the centre, and its relatively small offices in both Sheffield and London. So there's a question of capacity, I think, would be key, and I think Greg earlier and the Growth Programme Board earlier today, I think you very sensibly offered the support of the university sector through UK to work with the Department of Work and Pensions to bring that capacity on board over the next course of the next 2 or 3 months. And I think that's actually really critical. I think it's time now for universities working together in their areas to be perhaps a bit more clear on what it is they want to do and why they want to do it, to ensure that they've got a clear view to relay to the Department of Work and Pensions and how they see the design of these calls. Really important now to get down and to work. Really exciting time. The programme's about to open. I think we heard earlier that the European Social Fund programme is effectively agreed in principles, apart from the knock-ins at the end. So we're heading towards the opening, so now's the time. And we need to help, basically what I'm saying is we need to help the Department of Work and Pensions out a little bit over the course of the next few weeks and months.
I agree, and I think we've made that offer, and it's sort of in summary is we're not talking about the large chunk of ESF that is matched by the Skills Funding Agency. No. We're talking about the ESF that's left over and will be managed by DWP itself. And the sort of activities that universities can get engaged in are widening participation activities to support access into higher education, and activities alongside their programs that support enterprise, access, participation, employability. So it's doesn't relate to core undergraduate or postgraduate programs. And I think DWP is relatively nervous about the fact that it's got to pull together enough staff in a very short space of time to deliver the start of the program and put the calls out. So I think my take on it in the discussions we had was that they would be very much welcome Universities UK working with the universities to focus universities' efforts on the areas that ESF and DWP clearly can support and helping develop the process to achieve that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Greg, because I think across England at the moment, a good number of universities are becoming increasingly understand that there's a need for a specific focus for this type of activity. And I think for those perhaps who haven't needed to get towards that, there's a role for you at UK to do that. I think the other part of this discussion over the next few weeks is which part of it is the most urgent. Can we distinguish between ESF activities which really need to be brought forward now, or are there other activities which perhaps can wait perhaps another 2 or 3 months? Because if I were DWP, my focus, at least initially, would be on getting the opt-in arrangements in place. Now, it may be that the sector's got a discussion to have with DWP about what needs to come forward soon, or perhaps what can wait a little bit longer, because some of the activities at universities might want to fund with ESF will be dependent upon the academic year and about the cohort that will arrive in September and October. But other activities, the project can start in effect at any time of the year. So it's that distinguished. And I think that's effectively what we need to do now over the course of the next few weeks. So absolutely. Good time. We need to work. We need to work together as a sector. We need to work more closely with DWP. Some of the work that we've done initially with CLG, we need to discuss with DWP how that can be transferred across. And is that department equally confident? So let's get going.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome, Greg.
Cheers.